this is the generator. Little Sportsman 2000 watt. It has not ran in I don't know how long. It's just been sitting in this garage. Still has gas in it. I don't know if you can hear that. Well, you see the top sweat. It's weeped a little bit. I'm hoping it doesn't have a lot of runtime because I want to get it going, use it periodically on the bus since I had to sell my Honda EU 2000. And this is a severe downgrade from that, but needed cash while doing all this crap. You can see, like, even the motor's so clean. Other than someone who spilled oil all over the frame, it really doesn't look like it's been used much. So what I have to do is I'm gonna drain this fuel tank, take this carburetor off, see what the carburetor looks like. I feel in if it had fuel in it, it's probably pretty nasty. Let's pop it open and see, I guess. And we won't really see how dirty the bowl and stuff is until I actually get it opened up, because all this stuff should be fairly clean. Yeah, it doesn't even really look like it's been ran. If it did, like, not much. I don't know why there's all this dry dust in here. The filter was not seated correctly, as you can tell from the pinch marks on the filter. Unfortunately, my friend has the tendency to not always pay as much attention as he should when putting things back together, and stuff like that happens. Luckily, I don't think this generator was ran much at all, because from what I hear, it didn't run right from new, and I guess it never got fixed. So the filter issue shouldn't have caused any damage, but definitely could have if it was ran for a while with that filter in that condition, because it was not sealing properly. As you can see, all the dirt in here and near the mouth of the carburetor that would have ended up in the motor. Vacuum line was barely in that air box for the crankcase vent, but also got a little dirt in there. I'm sure this thing will need a little oil change after we get it going. Fuel's turned off. You can see that. Yeah, I think so. I'll grab some carb clean, spray this guy down. Or at least I hope to. Let me see if I can find some carb clean. All I'm seeing is brake clean. No, there's some around. Thanks. Might just have to pretend this is a break for today. Where can I put this? I need to grab my tripod. You don't need a lot of this stuff this time. Try to be cautious because you end up needing quite a bit of this at times, but sometimes not so much. With this, helps right off. Oop, a little crazy. I think I'm clean enough to take it apart without worrying about dropping dirt in the motor. Now that I got this cover off and it's clean, I'm gonna work on taking this throttle linkage and governor off there and fuel line, and looks like it should just pop off there. So I'm gonna set this over here and get to work. Why it's so dry rotted. It already was cracked, so I'm just gonna replace it and break it off here. Ready? Spring come off. This should slide. Don't know if it'll slide all the way out. No, looks like I gotta take these studs out. And they're tight. What you can do here is put a nut on, thread it in, then take your second nut from the other stud, turn it on the same one, and let me see if I can get a wrench real quick, because you're going to need a wrench or two wrenches to tighten them against each other. Sometimes it's hard to get a wrench on there, especially on these guys. I think I'm actually going to flip this over. So it goes like that. We're going to flip it like that. Put it back on. Probably how I should have done it the first time. And you can tighten them against one another. And what that does is lock it to this shaft, the stud. And it should just unscrew now. Hopefully. There we go. Oh, nope, I was wrong. I am turning everything all at once. I'm turning the two nuts together, not the stud along with the nuts. So, probably didn't have them tight enough. Let's try again. Having to do this because the linkage for the throttle is not long enough to allow it to slide off the studs and then undo the linkage. I'm going to do it like this. If I can. Oh, there we go. Now it should all come out together. I'll leave it just barely threaded in for a minute. Or maybe not. There we go. Take these off. You can see how tight those were. And doing this repair on this engine is almost universal with a lot of these small engine carbs that you come across on generators, power washers, sometimes lawnmowers. They work pretty similar, so don't be afraid to try it out if you're feeling leery. I did this when I was 10. Spacer fell out there. Now you can hopefully see how this linkage in the top of that carburetor. It actually has to be removed at, there you go, you can see it's got a little bend in it. You have to remove it a certain way, and you have to wiggle this carburetor around at odd angles. Because of that, you need those studs out to do it. So let's see here. And that's it. Carburetor's out. Try to take this guy apart now. Get the camera right. Trying to get some better lighting over here. Yeah, that's better. Alright, so this is your carburetor. Faces against the engine like this. Choke right here, and this is your throttle on the back side. Choke literally chokes the throttle off and breathes through that little hole that you see in that butterfly. That's your throttle. So what we're going to do is remove this jet later, but at the moment I want to see how dirty this is. So I'm going to take this bolt. Sometimes it's a nut, sometimes the whole bowl will unscrew, but a lot of times it's just held on with a bolt or a nut in the bottom. Grab something for that. I want to see how dirty it is in there. I'm just going to use just a wrench because why not? Can't always do that, but for little stuff like this, it's fine. Very sticky. Ooh, does not look good. I think this still has fuel in it. I'm going to grab a screwdriver and open up this bleeder screw here. See what comes out. Because it's not leaking out the top. If it's got fuel in there still, it could be all varnish. Gross. And a lot of these cheap generators from Harbor Freight, the carburetors work pretty similar. Some of them have electronic controls and are a little more fancy. Nothing coming out. Really hope this is dry, but we'll see. Looking awfully wet on these threads. Could just be motor oil. Kind of looks like motor oil. This thing might have got turned upside down at some point. Carburetor full of oil. maybe. And sometimes, you know, after you take that bolt out that holds this bolt on, it can be a little stuck. There's a gasket up here. There we go. Yeah, looks like motor oil in there. Yeah, definitely motor oil. Well, that actually probably, probably helped preserve this thing a little bit. I'd rather see oil in it than ew. I think I see what's happening here. It looks like the bottom of this carburetor neck, throat, whatever you want to call it, has been broken at some point. I think you can see that there. It's a pretty rough edge. Well, I don't know if it's going to be fatal on this carburetor yet, because it's still threads in there. It was still holding the cap on, the bowl cap. We will see when I throw it back together, but good news is, other than the oil, it doesn't look too bad. It really doesn't look like it's been used at all. So, don't know why this thing was having issues running. But I'm going to take the jets out anyway and inspect. As long as they come out. Fairly easy. Oh, they should. I can take this idle adjustment screw out right here. It hits this throttle linkage, or throttle lever the linkage was connected to, and that's how you control your idle speed for your generator. Just by turning this in and out. It normally doesn't take much of a turn to notice a difference. We're going to take that screw out because the jet is underneath of it. It's got a little spring on it too, so you don't want to lose that. This jet here is what I'm going for. You gotta grab a different screwdriver. You normally want these to feel pretty snug in the screw because you really don't want to damage the slots when you're removing jets because it can affect the performance. And that one just goes to its stops. Some jets are adjustable, so what I do when I'm removing them most of the time is thread them all the way until they stop when you first mess with it, and then remember how many turns. Sometimes it's like 2 turns, 2.5 turns until it stops at the bottom, and then you know where to set it when you put it back. Thread it all the way in, loosen it 2.5 turns, and it's right where it was when you started. Yeah, we still got some oil in the jets too, so we'll clean all that out of there. I think maybe you can see it there for a second. You can see that hole in the side of it. It has several holes in it, and you want to always make sure that they're very clean. You can see all these holes are full of oil. The gas normally would help dissolve that oil a little bit, but I don't know how thick it is or how long it's been sitting in there. So I'm going to spray it out. Let me also grab a rag. You should not be doing this like me and on a dirty table without laying some cardboard down or a rag. I'm just a little careless with my own stuff sometimes. It does appear that it is plugged on the bottom side. Try to get that in focus. Because it has a solid little plug in there. There you go. Not much of anything going to be able to get through that. So I'm going to get a little piece of wire or something and try to poke it and break it up. That could be the reason why it didn't run. Didn't run well. I don't know exactly what was wrong with it. Wasn't there when it was new. Just going to take a piece of wire here, stranded copper wire, strip a little bit back. Also with not a wire stripper. There we go. Can take some of this loose strands and use those to clean your jet. It is really grody. It's not what. Nope, there we go. Not wanting to clean up much. It's a very, very tiny hole. Smaller than one of those strands of copper. But it was definitely plugged a bit. Just try to spray some cleaner through it. It looks a bit better, but it's so small, it's so hard to tell. See if I can get any light through it. Try to blow on it a little bit. I think it cleared out, but it's so hard to tell. I'll spray a little bit more cleaner in here and stick it back together. You can always pull it out later if it's not running right. I am getting cleaner out the other ports in this jet, so I'm fairly confident it's cleaned out. You can kind of see that there. But it was definitely funky. Could have been part of our problem. I have not test fired this generator myself. I am only going off the knowledge I was told that it did not run correctly or run at all. So it's pretty simple to take these apart and pretty easy too. So it was just a good idea with how long it had been sitting to open it up and see what it looked like. I got lucky And it's not too bad so far. I think it'll be fine. I don't know if you can hear the coyotes in the background. Excuse me. Gonna take this other jet here out. And I guess it's not really a jet, it's a needle valve. And I broke my rule, damn it. I did not thread it all the way in before I unscrewed it. I made a mistake. I am human. That might bite me in the butt later. Don't do what I did. And thread this in all the way before you unscrew it, so you know where it belongs. I'm gonna have to visually put it back close to where I think it was, which is about there. So, we'll see. It also looks pretty clean in there. It's not the end of the world that I don't know the specs at the moment. We can sort that out. And I just want to clean these little ports. You can kind of see maybe the end of this nozzle, the tiny hole. There you go, tiny hole there. And that's what that needle comes into from the other side. Get some more ports down there. These two little pipes. Could just spray those out too. If you can open it, you can get to it, spray it out. We're going to pull this float off now. Just take this needle out. See, it just slides out. It holds the float, its little retainer, all together with a spring. It's good to have it upside down like this when you take it out, or else sometimes it can just fall apart. Put your needle somewhere safe. Slip this straight up, and there's your float valve. Just slides onto this little bracket here. Set it around somewhere. Now you can clean the passageway for your fuel inlet. Wasn't really dirty, but I wanted to spray it out anyway. Spray this bowl out a little bit. Top side of the rear end. I can remove this main jet. Don't think that's ever been removed. Very tight coming out. I don't like that. But the bolt head, because it comes into here further than it would if this wasn't busted off, it hits the threads on the inside where this jet comes through. And they're a little mangled up from it. But running it in and out a couple times might straighten them out. Hopefully. feels like it is. Just have patience and go back and forth. Definitely don't want to break that off, because you might need a new carburetor after all that if you can't get it out. Yeah, it's got a little bit of metal shavings around it. Threads might not be quite right in the carburetor housing either. These little small engine carburetors are the best for beginners, because worst comes to worst and you have to get like another carburetor because you've somehow ruined it. They're extremely cheap, like $20 a lot of times. So don't be afraid to do something like this if you've never done it. Jet looks clean. You can see the hole through it. There you go. You want to make sure that's nice and clean, nothing blocking it. Sometimes you get dirt down in this carburetor and gets sucked up into here, and then have all kinds of issues. A little tough threading it back in, but I think it'd be alright. Just you want it snug. Now we can drop our float assembly back on. My fuel valve here is falling off. So slipped it back on here. Just slides on and off with this little bracket here. Hangs on there. Just gonna drop it back in. See if I can spin this around first. Show you. So that valve is gonna go back in this hole. Drop that on there. Grab your pin from earlier. Make sure it's lined up with your float. You can see it coming through here. You just want to center it up. It sits in here freely. Just center it up. Make sure your float moves freely. Up and down. And then you're pretty much done there. Gonna set this carburetor to the side and clean the bowl housing out. That was full of oil. You can get that out of here because don't need it. Very strong. Take this bowl drain screw out now and spray that passageway out. And this one you just tighten up until it's snug. You don't really need to do anything special. Looks like it's working. Good. All good there. Looks like other than a little bit of a corrosion, it's in pretty good shape. Move it out here. Looks good. I'm gonna put it back together. Drain screw just goes back where it was. Tighten that up until it's snug. Then this cap can go back on. Bowl. You can see how this bowl doesn't touch the bottom of that neck. Typically, when they're not broken like this, they're a lot closer to one another, and the bowl kind of rests on the bottom after you have this snug. So I'm going to tighten it up and see if it'll seal. I guess we'll see if it'll seal when I put gas in it later. Don't think that'll be happening on this episode. That's pretty interesting. But I might probably just tie it in. Oops. It says a little rubber gasket on it. Put that against the bottom. Clean the bolt off. I think it'll be alright. Now I gotta adjust this, make sure it's in the groove, because you can have this a little off center and not realize it. But I need to spin this bowl until I have the screw where I can access it when it's on the motor. Because when you're not using these motors, you should open that screw and drain the fuel out of the carburetor. It can save you some trouble if they sit for months at a time. Once again, just snugging this up with this little adjustable. Having the correct wrench would be better, but and you also just want to make sure that's snug. It doesn't have to be super tight. Put this idle adjustment screw back in. Goes in this little threaded hole there. And I'm going to set it about there. Can always adjust it later. And that's it for the carburetor. Set that there for a moment. This spacer, heat spacer most likely, that comes off the motor. You can see how this side doesn't have a gasket on it. It's because the gasket is stuck on the motor side. So I'm going to put this side back to the motor. This side that still has a gasket on it can seal against the carburetor. You want to pay attention to stuff like that so you don't accidentally put it on backwards. It's easy to do without realizing. Backwards. I need to take these out for a minute. Gasket come off now. That's alright. Set everything to the side. Need to pick this carburetor up and put the linkage back on before I put the stud through it and put all that together. Just the reverse of how you took it apart. Slip it through the hole, turn the carburetor. Now it's locked together. You can also take your governor screw or governor spring here. Put that back on while you got a little bit better reach. And that's back together. The spring was a little wrapped up. Fix that up. Put it back in. There we go. Now I can slide one of these studs in through the carburetor. Put the spacer back in back here. I'm just going to thread this in a little bit. Now I can't go anywhere. Take my other stud. Make sure it's through the spacer, through your gasket. You don't want to pinch that. Alright. Visually inspect everything that you can. It's all looking good. I'm just gonna start slide the carburetor back and tighten everything in the reverse order. These two nuts are still locked together, so now I can slide it back in if it stops.